I cannot stand, as someone that's part English, and I'm not picking on the English, I cannot stand the abject astronomical tyranny of people that have been thrown in the pokey, you know, been put in chains over super innocent and, might I add, highly factual things put on various social media in the UK. I get along great with the Russian people, okay? I don't care what anybody thinks about the United States. But I can go downtown and hold up a protest sign on the corner of the street. No one gives a darn, nor am I in trouble. If I were to hold up any kind of sign in protest of anything, anywhere in Russia, yeah, St. Petersburg, Moscow, yeah, they throw me in shackles. They throw me in a dark pit, throw away the key. 10 minutes, I'd get arrested within 10 minutes. So anybody could pick on the United States all they want, but at least I can go down to the corner here and hold up a protest sign. Even if it's misinformation. Even if it's factually incorrect. There's a whole lot of this in academia. They're called gatekeepers. They're also too called a dog in the manger. Peer review. I hear that all the time. Peer review. If you really knew what peer review actually meant, you would never, ever, ever use those. Read your stuff in peer reviewed. Peer review is a bunch of dogs that got certified in the same nonsense. This dog agrees that this dog's a little dirty starfish smells as good as that other dog's dirty starfish, and that dog agrees that the dog in front of him's dirty starfish smells just as good as his. It's just a circle of dogs sniffing dirty starfishes. I think you know what a dirty starfish is. There's going to be a boon in the future. We're going to look at the time of free information and paper material, which cannot be digitally. You could burn them like they did back in WW2, which is what their version of digital scrubbing was. You just piled them all in the city center and you threw gasoline on them and you lit those books up. Look at that, and everybody's cheering. Yay! Burning intelligent books, to help people. Yeah, this is crowd psychology. But only evil and tyranny wants to suppress free speech. I mean, if they want to suppress it, that means that it either wrecks their narrative or themselves because they want to hold on to power and or they want to hold on to their silly little beliefs.
Those people out there seeking truth, I don't believe I would go to this platform anymore. Here's why. Your video is removed because it violates our hate speech policy. You can see how they make these laws that seem to be pleasant and correct and use them and twist them in a way to remove and diminish your right to free speech. All I did was list news articles, mainstream media news content that proves the comment that I made here. And the funny thing is, it's only, well, now it says it's 99% processed. A minute ago it said it was 39% loaded. I felt compelled to make this short movie here after several people had made a comment to me that goes like this. Why would all the world's nations about the earth being round? So this background should give you that answer. I think the current situation with COVID 1984 virus and the fact that every nation on the world is involved behind the scam. Have you ever seen that YouTube video, 15 times the Simpsons predicted the future? I'm sure you saw the part where they show 9/11 before there was a 9/11. How about when Lisa becomes president after Donald Trump and claims the country is broke? First aired on March 19th, 2000. Like I stated in another post, this is what Freemasons call revelation of the method. More like predictive programming. Not really predicting the future, these events are planned. Remember, the Warren Report stated Oswald acted alone. Statement by so-called reporter Dan Rather, account from November 25th, 1963. This is his account after watching and describing the Zapruder film, where he claimed the president's head, quote, appeared to move violently forward.
The films we saw were taken by an amateur photographer who had a particularly good vantage point just past the building from which the fatal shot was fired. The films show President Kennedy's open black limousine making a left turn off Houston Street onto Elm Street on the fringe of downtown Dallas, a left turn made just below the window in which the assassin was waiting. About 35 yards past the very base of the building, just below the window, President Kennedy could be seen to put his right hand up to the side of his head to either brush back his hair or perhaps rub his eyebrow. President Kennedy was sitting on the same side of the car as the building from which the shot came. Mrs. Kennedy was by his side. In the jump seat in front of him, Mrs. Connolly and Governor Connolly. Governor Connolly on the same side of the car as the president, and in the front seat, 2 Secret Service men. Just as the president put that right hand up to the side of his head, you could see him lurch forward. The first shot had hit him. Mrs. Kennedy was looking in another direction and apparently didn't see or sense that first shot or didn't hear it. But Governor Connolly in the seat in front appeared to have heard it, or at least sensed that something was wrong. The governor's coat was open. He reached back in this fashion, exposing his white shirt front to the assassin's window. He reached back as if to offer aid or ask the president something. At that moment, a shot clearly hit the governor in the front, and he fell back in the seat. Mrs. Connolly immediately threw herself over him in a protective position. In the next instant, with this time Mrs. Kennedy apparently looking on, a second shot, the third total shot, hit the president's head. His head could be seen to move violently forward.
Fun fact, most of you may not know, that part of the Zapruder film that wasn't shown in its entirety until 1975, March 6th, on Good Night America. That shows this was made public because bootleg copies were made after Jim Garrison used the video to try Clay Shaw. Again, the film was shown here on this show, first time, 1975. So
I thought that had we had radio and the communication system when Abraham Lincoln was shot, how valuable would tapes be? 1963 of Lincoln. So I put on all my radios, all my televisions, and started taping. About 4 hours into taping, I start hearing the same people being interviewed again, and what they said the first time had changed. And the only common denominator was that they had talked to the Secret Service. And from that point on, I was a little suspicious of what was happening. Not too much, but then when I started listening to the theories that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assailant, and then things started coming out that we didn't know before, that the parade route had been changed. And then when you find out that Lee Harvey Oswald, the day that President Kennedy made the announcement he was going to Dallas, and right after that, he got a job at the book depository. Now, if the parade route wasn't planning on going that way, then he had set himself up in the wrong location, or he knew something. Now, if Lee Harvey Oswald do not have the ability and the power and the rank and position to change the parade route, then who did? And from that point, I started, really looking into it. I met a very brilliant gentleman in London at the time named Ralph Shunman, who had also been looking into it. And as I started meeting various people, that was looking for something else, I found out that there was a whole like a cult out here that didn't believe it. But we just kept looking and kept waiting for the press. And then when they said they would have the Warren Commission, this stopped everything because we knew that these loose ends would be tied in, and they never were.
I want to introduce another guest. We have Robert Groden, who is celebrating his 18th birthday on the 22nd of November in 1963. He was profoundly touched by the president's death, and he desperately wanted to understand how it could have happened. For 2 years, he, like most Americans, believed in the official version, the Warren Commission version of what happened, but the day he first saw that 8mm Zapruder film, that amateur film that was made, that was the day he stopped believing. Robert, welcome, and I wish you could set up the Zapruder film a bit for us, and we'll get right into it.
Okay. Abraham Zapruder was a Dallas dress manufacturer, and it was pure accident that he brought the camera with him that day. He almost didn't. And he was looking for a good vantage point, and he picked a point on Elm Street in Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas. As the motorcade passed in front of him, he got what is frame for frame the most valuable historical document of all.
Now, with the president and Mrs. Kennedy is also Governor Connolly.
Right. Now, before he goes behind the sign, the president is waving to the crowd. When he comes out from behind the sign, he is shot. Then Governor Connolly is shot.
He's already been hit.
He's already been hit.
And now?
At the bottom of the screen, the headshot.
That's the shot that blew off his head. It's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in the movies.
Now, the Warren Commission said that all of the shots were fired from behind by Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone assassin, firing at the president. And as you could see, clearly, the head is thrown violently backwards, completely consistent with the shot from the front, right. Now, this is an extreme blow-up of just the president from the film.
All right.
Coming out behind the sign, he's shot.
He's hit from the
He's hit here.
From the front, too.
From the front. Now, Jackie doesn't realize what's happened yet. She goes to his aid.
And now? He's hit
Again,
from...
the violent backward motion, totally consistent with 80% of the witnesses, which said the shot came from the grassy knoll in front and to the right.
It's interesting to note how many people is running towards where most folks thought the shots came from.
The head goes backwards in the next film from the other side of the street.
Oh, God, that's awful. That's the most upsetting thing I've ever seen. Well, toast. My reaction now, after listening to Dick and to Bob and to Ralph and seeing that incredible and very horrifying film, is to ask what's wrong with the old evidence. The official explanation of the Warren Commission that Oswald was acting alone is just so difficult to reconcile with the evidence that exists today. Now, if you can remember back and be honest to when all these theories about conspiracies first came out in the mid-60s, then we treated the researchers and the people doing this investigation as kind of paranoid kooks. I mean, let's be honest, that's the way it was. But now we've all lived through the Pentagon Papers, Watergate, dirty tricks, and even the allegations, and I stress the point that they're only allegations, that the CIA and the FBI, institutions that are so solid in American history and the fabric of American society, have engaged in illegal operations against American citizens. Well, because of all that, I think that most people are now more willing to listen to opposing.
The USA claimed in 1964 Vietnam Navy attacked our ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. This led to millions of Vietnamese people being killed and more than 58,000 of our own soldiers in the war that followed. The Defense Secretary at the time, Mr. McNamara, later admitted in this 2004 documentary that it never happened. It was a lie.
They get keyed up to a thing like this, everything they hear on the sonar is a torpedo.
You're pretty sure there was a torpedo attack, then?
Oh, no doubt about that,
Yeah.
I think. No doubt about that.
No, it was just confusion. And events afterwards showed that our judgment that we'd been attacked that day was wrong. It didn't happen.
Now, I hope you're all aware that Bush Jr. claimed Iraq was behind 9/11, and after the war began, he later claimed that he never said that, they weren't involved. As for 9/11, a reporter here was looking for an eyewitness, but the one he caught in this 2-minute clip says there was no second plane. The reporter said, when asked by the witness, who said there was this plane? It was a bomb. The reporter replied, they saw it on TV. This reminds me of a quote by Richard Nixon. American people won't believe anything till they see it on TV.
No second plane. It was a bomb. Bombed in the building, not second plane. That was a bomb. Who said the second plane?
That's what we're told. The second plane. We saw it on television.
I saw everything.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. This is.
Startling, rarely seen footage from the Brooklyn Bridge has rekindled the debate on whether the 9/11 used hijacks and ferry planes or simply fairy tales on that fateful day. We'll present you the evidence and let you make up your own mind. First, we need to verify exactly where this footage was filmed from so that we can identify and compare camera perspective with the official flight trajectory and evidence to make sure the buildings could not have been in any way obscuring any ferry plane. Here we see clearly the person is standing left of the Samadurai building. Just further down ahead on his left, we see the distinct 333 Pearl Street. And as we see a bridge between them, the end of the Brooklyn Bridge. Just to the right of the World Trade Centers from the camera's perspective, the white Tartarian Woolworth building with the distinct green top dome. And just to the left in front of the World Trade Centers, the black rectangle tower of One Liberty Plaza. Samadurai on the right, Brooklyn Bridge on the left, 333 Pearl Street, One Liberty Tower, Woolworth Tower, World Trade Centers. This is the camera angle we are watching. Samadurai on the right, Brooklyn Bridge on the left, 333 Pearl Street, One Liberty Tower, Woolworth Tower, World Trade Centers. Why is this important? Because from the camera's perspective filming angle line, this places 45th Park Place and 30 Western Broadway on the exact right side of the Twin Towers, which places the ferry plane arrival and impact on the left side of the camera angle. Why? Because the official 9/11 NIST, or rather MIST report, tells us that 45th Park Place and Murray Street, 3 city blocks further from the towers, is where both an engine and landing gear from the second ferry plane was found, if you can believe that, after striking through the South Tower at such a speed that both went flying through the solid steel column core of the building and landed there without disintegrating. Sort of like you punching through Mount Everest and your fist being found in the valley on the other side of the mountain. So, we are told by the 9/11s that this first ferry plane strikes the North Tower's higher 94th through 98th floor first, flying from the direction over 45th Park Place and Murray Street into the towers, or rather, from the right side of the filming camera's perspective angle, traveling left into the towers. So far, so good. And then this second ferry plane strikes the second South Tower on its lower 78th through 84th floors from the opposite direction, from the left side of the camera's perspective angle to the towers heading to the right, sending the engine and landing gear flying even further right 3 blocks away, landing on 45th Park Place and Murray Street from our camera's view. So again, from our camera angle and perspective, we will clearly see the second ferry plane come in from the left side of the viewing screen and strike the South Tower from left to right. Let's watch it in real time. Did you miss it? Let's watch it again, closer. Still missed it? Let's zoom right in and watch it in reverse, in slow motion, and see the ferry plane leaving the building backwards. Well, that's odd. We know there should be a giant ferry plane there, clear as day. The NIST report told us that the first ferry plane struck the North Tower at the higher 94th to 98th floors, and that the second ferry plane hit the South Tower on the much lower 78th to 84th floors. Yep, check. We know that the second ferry plane crashed into the southeast side of the South Tower and sent the engine and landing gear crashing through the northeast side of the tower and landing 3 blocks north on 45th Park Place and Murray Street. And there certainly is an explosion right there. Check. We know we are looking at the correct angle of the towers because 45th Park Place and Murray Street are on the north side of the second struck South Tower, or the right side of this cameraman's recording angle, and there is no Brooklyn Bridge on the west side of these towers, so we have to be viewing them from the east. Thus, the ferry plane had to have come in from the left side, or south. Check. The only thing missing is an actual ferry plane, instead of the fairy tale we seem to have been given instead. By the way, this massive thing is a Boeing 767 engine. And no, those are not midgets, they are full-sized adults. I don't know what this tiny 1.5-foot engine, the size of the Murray Street sign, belongs to, or what it's even doing there. I suppose you could ask the 9 Elvin Is Fairy Ailey Project Gelatin art students who line the entire 91st floor with dozens of giant boxes filled with BB-18 electrical fuses and repelling ropes. Maybe that little engine was part of their project, but that's none of my business.
What you're seeing here is the F-4 Phantom being driven down this rocket sled at 500 miles an hour and crashed into this concrete reinforced wall. You can see how it totally disintegrates. Now compare that, juxtapose that against the events of 9/11.
It from a different angle as it slammed into the
Consider what one of our highest ranking soldiers once said. Major General Smedley Butler in 1935. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest and easily most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one in international scope. Well, remember, that was before they created NASA and all these other so-called space agencies. And if you don't know, NASA gets over $60 million a day in their budget. It is like corporate welfare too. This whole began with the Jesuit doctrine of learning versus learning that they started when arguing against the first reformers, Martin Luther and John Calvin. You know the book of Genesis says, the sun, moon, and stars are a sign unto us. Jesus said, in the last days, the moon would not give her light, and the stars would fall to the earth. When they asked him for a sign, he said, a wicked generation will desire a sign, and the only sign given will be the sign of Jonah. That sign is the total solar eclipse.